Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. Today we're going to examine Tsaroth, continuing the Great Cities of Krynn podcast I began some time ago. Tsaroth was founded thousands of years before the War of the Lance by descendants of the Utkiri people. The grand city was apparently dedicated to the gods, stood as a bastion of peace, prosperity, and trade. At its peak, the city was one of the largest inland trade cities in the world, built at the crossroad of two major trade routes, one that ran north-south and the other east-west. Tsaroth was home to tens of thousands of people from all across Ansalon, with the city also a production powerhouse, making plenty of goods, with a lot of the goods made, bought, and sold in the city being sold in the great markets and bazaars that populated the city and that supplied lands as far afield as Palanthas, Kauthus, Tarsus, and Hilo. Even Istar tend to depend on the markets of Tsaroth. The trouble is that Tsaroth was to descend into darkness, with its wealth and fabulous success corrupting the city and its people, who turned from piety and generosity to gluttony, greed, and the pursuit of worldly pleasures. Description is something that often happens historically, the dark con of man, so to speak. It was also within this city that mages were hunted ere the cataclysm hit. The city was at one point so wealthy that it gave everybody a quality of life that was undreamed of in other cities. Then it became impossibly poor just before the cataclysm, the city having pockets of great wealth, but it was a handful of merchant princes who led lives of luxury and decadence, while thousands starved to death in the city's increasingly dangerous, dilapidated slums. Something that's not at all peculiar to civilization in general. This fall on the part of the city is reminiscent of many of the cities of the Hyborian Age from the literature of Howard. Temples and the merchant classes ended up basically raising taxes and fees while the city's infrastructure fell apart all around them due to indifference. Public buildings fell apart and crime was rampant. The princes only looked to themselves. And they ended up turning on the mages and followed the decrees of the king priest of Istar. Just before the cataclysm, Tsaroth exploded into a citywide riot as the desperate population rose up against the merchant and clerical princes and laid siege to their estates. And it was in this state of social upheaval that the fiery mountain struck Istar and changed the face of Ansalon. Struck Istar, sending it to the bottom of the ocean. As to Tsaroth, a great fissure cracked open and swallowed most of the city, as a central part of the continent sank 1,000 feet below the seas in an instant. The waters of the turbidous ocean rushed in, and as new sea was born, it battered what was left of the ancient city. Tsaroth thus became a ruin, was abandoned by what few survivors there were. Only the ruins and the Temple of Mishakal survived. In the Age of Despair, though, it was to be discovered by gully dwarves when Nulf Pulp fell down a shaft which led into Tsaroth. He claimed it as Pulp property and allowed the Slud and Glow clans to move in as well. Glungu Pulp invented a lift made of two large pots, and this lift system was later used by the Draconians. It is also in Tsaroth where the discs of Mishakal were found, and where Kassanth, Black Dragon, Death on Black Wings, as she's also called, was destroyed by the power of Mishakal. The most notable parts of this city are the Great Plaza, the Court of the Aghar, the Hall of the Ancestors, the Royal Palace of Tsaroth, and of course, the untouched, or mostly untouched, Temple of Mishakal. If you enjoyed this video, do feel free to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Theros hammering the Dragonlances into shape.